Have you ever printed out a photo like that was gonna look awesome and looks like garbage because you didn't know what you were doing? Well, that's what this video is gonna be about today, is giving you guys a set of tips that will help you print better photos at home. So if you're watching this video, you find out like me that printing at home is a lot harder than it sounds. I'm just gonna show you the difference between these two photos right here. The one that I have in frame is what the photo should look like after I fixed what I did wrong. And what's gonna be lying out printed that I just picked up is gonna be my first misprint of this photo. And I'll walk you through what's wrong with it, and I'm gonna get into 10 steps on how you can avoid some of the mistakes I made in this one and some other general mistakes which you might encounter while you're printing out your own photos at home, because as you know, as you found out, the printer is expensive, the ink is expensive, the paper is expensive, and it can be time consuming. So let's walk through some of these steps, starting with these guys. So just looking at these two photos, besides the fact that the final one is framed and the other one is just a piece of paper, one thing to point out is that you can see the noticeable difference in the clouds. This one's got a little bit more of a red hue, while this one is more orange, just saturated. And then you can even see in the mountain ridges is that the normal one is just how I wanted it, and the misprint has a little bit more saturation in the yellows. And this was due to a paper error, a print error. It's kind of a setting that you have to adjust in Photoshop, which we'll get into. But this is just an up-close shot for you guys to see how a few different settings in your computer and in your printer can affect a photo to this kind of scale. So as you can see with the problems in this photo, I've got this giant folder which I've labeled screw ups, which is kind of hard to see because the light from my light is bouncing off this and blowing this up. But a lot of the problems I'm going to be fixing are things I've encountered with issues of the photos I've had in this folder and some that I've printed. I'm going to list those out down below. If it's not an issue that you're looking at how to fix, please find another video that can help you with that, because there are so many issues out there with technical support. I may not have the answers for you in this video, so I don't want you sitting here with however long this video is going to be, hoping that I answer your question when I probably may not be able to get to it. If it's something super specific, leave in the comment section below. I'll let you know if I can answer it or not in a later video, or just responding to your question immediately. Some of the problems that I've encountered that you may have already encountered is a kind of set by the example of my screw file. So for this one, this is a photo of my friend Steph and her sister. It looks normal, but right down here at the bottom, the printer stopped printing and spit it out early, which you can kind of see by this really faint line at the bottom. That's not a hard edge, so that just kind of basically shows right where the printer gave up and said, I'm done printing this, deal with it. This little guy right here, I didn't mess this up, but it's a good example of how it kind of helps you saving on ink and paper without dealing with all the headaches of having to reprint something. Making little test prints like this, a little small 4x5 or a 5x4, depending on the orientation of your photo, can help you save a lot of time and money, because you can see what your mistake might be on a smaller piece of paper. But this does prevent you from making a lot of rookie mistakes or just mistakes here and there, such as the rest of these. A good example of making a mistake in settings is this tiger photo right here. I thought I did everything right, but then when I printed out, I got this desaturated picture of my tiger. And this is because I forgot to set the specific paper setting in the printer settings. So it's one of those extra steps you have to think about before you actually just hit print. And if you just hit print without checking that, you can then get a messed up version of your print. Even if it looks fine on the computer and you think it's all set up, you can still make one simple mistake and get a photo that's not exactly correct. These two are really bad rookie mistakes. As you can see, the paper is kind of cut and chopped off and the photos don't look exactly right. And that's because they are. So in these two photos, I basically entered the wrong paper orientation into the printer versus what I had in Photoshop and Lightroom. And stuff like that will end up causing the printer to print the photo at not the right orientation. So if you think it's going landscape, it might print it vertical or vice versa. Those are easy fixes to just even write down to make sure you don't mess up beforehand. But I messed up a few times with that, not realizing the numbers I was entering into my computer and printer. This photo right here is a little dark, and that's because of a setting in Lightroom that I didn't really click on to double check. A better version of this are these two photos I'm about to show you. So these two photos are of the same pier at Santa Monica. So the thing about these photos is one's darker than the other. In the dark sections, it's kind of hard to tell, but there's a little tool in Lightroom that you can turn on and off that will tell you if your photo is too dark or too bright, because what happens is you can crush your black so much that what you think is dark on your computer and you can still see the details on the shadow, when it prints out, you won't be able to see it at all. So it's a quick setting in Lightroom I can show you how to deal with. This print right here, this is going to be a few bonus tips at the end. So I didn't actually mess up the print. What I did is I messed up the after step is basically I messed up titling it and my signature at the bottom. I was just starting to realize that the way I was doing it originally was really hard to just keep the same, and it was just really frustrating if you mess up one little letter. So then I started to actually sign on my actual photo, but I messed up right here because I forgot that sometimes, since the paper is different, we're used to signing a piece of paper and it drying immediately with a Sharpie. I signed it with a professional gel, similar to a Sharpie, but a gel pen, and I put it in the paper, and then I looked and it was completely smudged, and because I didn't let the ink of the actual pen dry. I did the same thing on this one of this picture of these two boats that I just showed earlier. So it's hard to see, but right down here in the corner you can see this little silver line, and that's because that should be a signature, but that's my signature after being basically rubbed together between the plastic and the actual print itself, which means I had to reprint this again. So these are a lot of common mistakes which you can avoid if you just take the time to even watch this video, prepare stuff. A lot of these are just impatient or rookie mistakes that I made, and now I know how to pay attention to them. But I'm going to run through a bunch of tips on how you can avoid a lot of these problems and not waste any more of your time struggling to print your photos. Tip number 1, is everything connected properly? I know that seems like common sense, but a lot of times if your printer is having a hard time communicating with your computer or with your device you're printing from, you're going to have a hard time printing. So it's just good to make sure that your printer is on and functional, that your computer is on and functional, and that they can communicate together, and that you can basically have a printing connection. Tip number 2, making sure you have enough ink. So as you know, you need ink to print photos. You want to make sure your printer has enough ink for the photos that you plan on printing, because if it doesn't, you're going to get all the way through a print and then your printer might get upset or try to change the color or not print it fully. Then you've wasted ink of all those colors. And if you've looked into printing at home alone, or you do print at home alone, you do know how expensive ink is, or you've done the research and you've done replacement cartridges, and it's just frustrating having to pay $80 for a color, and it's basically $400 to replace the entire set, which is just one of those costs you don't associate with having to do a bunch of printing at home. So it's always good to check how much ink you have and to see if you need to increase any of the levels or replace any cartridges at all. And if you do have to, you just have to open the ink cover, which my printer will do in a second. And then it's beeping, that's not. And then you'll just see the long list of cartridges, and your printer will tell you which one is low. You just click one of these little tab buttons, push it down, pull out the cartridge, open up the new one, put it back in, close the hood, and then you'd be all set in that category. Tip number 3, you need to calibrate your screen. If you don't know what this is the Datacolor Spider X. It's a device and program that allows you to color coordinate your screen to exactly what it actually should be, so that it can match what your eye sees on your screen and that your printer is matching what you see on your screen. Now you might have a set of color calibrations already by default on your computer. I know that Microsoft has a bunch of different ones you can choose from, like gaming, low light, photo, video. There's a bunch of different modes. The thing is, even if you throw it on the photo mode or the video mode, it's still not going to be 100% exactly what you're actually going to be printing. So if you don't color calibrate your screen, you're going to get off colors anyway, and you're going to be sitting there struggling, trying to figure out why the colors don't match what you're actually printing, even though all your other settings are correct. I do have a separate video on this, which will just tag down below and throw up here, so I'm not going to get super deep into this, but these are super important to make sure you want to print exactly what you see on your screen. tip number 4, making sure you don't crush your blacks too much and making sure you don't blow out your whites too much. So I'm going to open up Photoshop and go to one of my travel photos I did recently in Florida and kind of show you guys a few things to make sure that you don't make these mistakes, which end up printing pure black or pure white, which causes you to lose an edge on white paper or just not be able to see any of the detail in your shadows and darks. So in Lightroom, I've got a photo that I just took in the Everglades of the sun setting. When I say I just took this photo, this was back in March. It's mid-August right now. But in Lightroom, right above the histogram, you'll see these 2 little boxes. And those are kind of showing you where your blacks and your whites are going to be clipping. So if you see this little white line that's around the box, that says it's on. And if you see on the photo, we've got these little black areas that are highlighted in blue. And that's the software telling me I made that part so dark, if I print it, the black is going to get clipped, so it's just going to be pure black and you're not going to see any of the texture or detail. And for me, in these patches, it's so small that I don't care. But if I, let's say, move the blacks down even more, you're going to see those areas start to grow. And if your image kind of looks like that, where there's too much of that blue haze on top of your photo, if you try to print it out, it's just going to be pure black in those spots and it's not going to look right. If I undo that, it's going to be the same with white, where if I make it too bright, as you can see with the sun is turning red, that's telling me that it's going to be too blown out there. It's going to be pure white instead of seeing the natural color of the sun in this image. So if I went to print it out like either of those two, you're just going to get a blown out trim along the edge with the white, or I could either get super darks and it's just going to be pitch black on my printed out photo. So I moved into Photoshop. I know you can print through Lightroom, but I learned how to print using Photoshop, so I'm gonna stay using Photoshop. And it's just, I know how to do it already, so it's just like, why learn both if you know one already, but that's up to you. But as you can see, we've got my photo, we're in Photoshop. I'm gonna do Control P as if I was going to print it right now. And as you can kind of see, the menu that popped up already doesn't look right. So there's a bunch of things we have to reconfigure in here to make sure that the photo actually prints the way we want it to. So the first step you want to do is make sure that the layout is on horizontal or landscape, so it's at least going the right way. And in print settings, we open this up, and as you can see, we can get a few pop-ups that come up. So this first one, we got all these settings. We gotta first make sure that we're gonna be using the right paper type. So mine's already on the correct setting in ultra premium photo paper. I'm using luster paper. That's exactly what I have right here. If you're using something different, if you're using glossy, if you're using matte, you're gonna wanna make sure you switch it, because this setting is telling your printer how to actually print the ink onto the specific kind of paper. So that's how I messed up that tiger shot, is I had the wrong paper type in and my printer didn't print properly because of that. Color, leave it on color unless you're printing a different way. Mode, leave it off. Paper setting. So sheet paper is like your square pieces of paper. You could be using a different type, like if you have a giant big roll, like you're printing on a massive printer and you see that giant roll of paper, then you gotta switch. If you're just printing out individual sheets, keep it on sheet. Then size. So the last photo I printed was an 8.5 by 11. Let's say I'm printing on a 17 by 22. I'd have to change that size. USA 17 by 22. So I'm gonna click OK for this. So now, as you can see, my photo has readjusted to a more proper size. But as you can see, it's still pushing up against the edges. So that means I actually do need to go back a step and rearrange the actual image size. So I'm going to hit done. It's not going to be printing, so I'm going to go up to image, image size, and I'm just going to go to inches to make this really simple. I'm going to make this a 16 by 20. Now the size, you can see, it's not a 16 by 20. The actual image itself is too big, so I'm going to go back a further step and make sure I crop it to a orientation that does work for 16 by 20. So now I'm going to stretch this out. Make sure that fits. Hit enter. Go back to control print. Now, as you can see on the screen, you're gonna have that white border of safe space from the photo paper that I'm printing to the image on top of it. Now what's important, the next step is right here, color management. A lot of the times it's going to be on Photoshop manages color. You just want to make sure it's not on printer manages color, because Photoshop is what you're seeing. You can't see what the printer is going to do. So make sure you leave it on Photoshop manages colors. And then for printer profile, now you can mess this up. This is paper specific. So it's on Surface Book 2 3-2 because that's what the screen calibration is on. But this is when you want to scroll up to actually find the paper that you're printing on. So I am using Series Ultra Premium Photo Paper. SCP-800 is the type of printer I have. I want to make sure that the printer profile is on that so the printer knows this is the kind of paper that I'm printing with, not a different kind of paper. If you go back to the image that I had to originally start off this video where the color is off, that's because my printer profile setting was on what I thought it should have been for the printer, what I was seeing on screen, when it should have been on the actual paper, and that's what caused the discoloration that you saw. So if everything is alright with this, you would then hit print, and then your printer would do the rest for you, and you'd be on your merry way. Another good tip is to know how to put the paper into your printer. I know that sounds just like so common sense, but it's an easy way to mess up your print. And what this results in is having the photo print the wrong way. So I put a piece of paper into my printer. You want to make sure it's all the way to the far right, and then there's going to be a little slider inside that you can make sure the paper is locked into place and isn't being jostled around while the printer is actually printing. But what will come up is a little menu on your printer that's going to ask you what size the piece of paper is. So a lot of times I just leave it as user defined premium luster, because then your computer, or your printer will go off what your computer is doing. But if you are going to be entering in the actual size of the paper, one thing to make sure is that when you put it in, it's going to go by width by height. So that's important, because if you try to do it the backwards way, like if I put this paper in, I'm printing a landscape, I need to make sure I still put the paper into the printer width by height in that orientation. So if I try to switch it, it's going to end up printing the wrong way. For example, my photo of the Hobbit house that I showed earlier, it was a landscape. I thought, oh, I'm putting a landscape, so I should tell my printer it's going to be, the long way is going to be 22 and tall by 17 for the paper, and it ended up printing the basically backwards. So you want to make sure when you're telling the printer settings in your computer and your printer, you want to be telling it the way you're putting it into the printer, not the way it should be coming out, or it's going to print the wrong way. So if that was confusing at all, I'm going to actually go through the entire process right now, because there's a print that I need to print out for one of my buddies by being my 200th subscriber. How you doing, Marcelo? I know it's been 5 months since I said I'd do this, but I'm printing out the photo now, so I hope you enjoy it. Find a cool place to hang it or display it at your own place. Alright, so I'm in Photoshop. I've got my photo. It's of a winter pony in Iceland. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure it's cropped correctly to start. So I'm going to be doing an 8x10 form, which is a 4x5 crop. I've got this. I've got my horse centered and set up, so it's just going to crop the image a little bit. There we go. Image size. I'm going to make sure that it's already in an 8x10 so it fits correctly on the screen. So it's at a 16x20 because I printed it bigger. So I'm going to be switching this to an 8x10, hitting OK. It's going to resize the image for me. Take a second. Bam, there we go. I'll just zoom in so we can see it a little bit better. Now I'm going to go up to Command Print or Control Print, depending on what computer you have. Since we just set up the settings for a larger print, it looks really tiny on the screen. So I'm going to be going to Print Settings. We got Sheet, check, Luster Paper, check, Color, Size, Letter Size, 8.5 by 11. Select OK. Now it fits correctly. Down here, I'm going to make sure it's Photoshop manages colors. As you can see, a slight change in the color. That's just trying to show you what it looks like. Everything else is set up correctly. The layout's horizontal. Now I'm going to go to my printer. I'm going to put my piece of printer paper in. I'm going to put my photo paper in. Short way down, long way up. You want to make sure that you print the shiny side facing you. It's basically the paper, if it's glossy or luster, you're gonna see a shine on the front and it's gonna be very flat on the back. If you mess this up, it's just gonna look really terrible when you actually print the photo out. I'm gonna take my little plastic slider in here and basically drag it all the way to the side to make sure that it locks the piece of paper into the right size so it doesn't jostle back and forth. And this could be an issue if you don't do this. Make sure that the door is open and the tray is out. That way, so when the photo prints out, it lays flat on the tray. One final tip, I can't prove this, but I've had a few times, as you saw with the photo with Steph and her sister, where it looks like the printer and the computer disconnected from each other. And both of those times, I was on my phone doing something between my computer and my printer. So as a very voodoo superstitious tip, anything that has a connection to something in the room or is transmitting a signal to something, don't have it be between the printer and computer while you're printing, because I just don't want anything to just mess it up. But back to the printer or printing of this photo, everything's set up, paper's loaded, tray's ready, and all the settings are right on my computer. So now I'm going to hit print, keep my fingers crossed and hope for the best, and move out of the way with my phone. Another small piece of advice is after it's printed, let it sit for a few minutes to just make sure that the ink definitely dries. The last thing you want to do is pick it up and accidentally smudge it or damage it at all. So just for a second, just kind of let the photo sit still without picking it up and waving it back and forth. So just to even show you guys as an example how frustrating printing can be, because I literally made a mistake as I was making my first copy. I had accidentally not even noticed that I misclicked or just accidentally changed the profile printer setting of my photo print with Eval as explaining not to make that mistake. So I've got two different copies of the photo I just printed, which I'll give you a top-down version right now. So it's really hard off the bat if you don't know what to look for between these two prints. This is the correct print, this is the screw up. So what happened was, this was printed correctly and I actually had the printer profile for matte paper on this one instead of luster, which switched without me realizing it. So what happened was the blue was a little off, but that's really hard to tell where this is right now. But if you look at the nose of the horse and the hair, the coloring should be more brown like it is in this one. And it's just a little discolored and not exactly what it should be in this copy. So that slightest difference in printing could literally just because you actually misclicked a setting or were on the wrong profile or any of the reasons we just went through in this video. But that small of a difference can make your photo come out correct or incorrect. Now for the bonus tip section, this is something that I honestly get really stressed about for no reason, and it's just going to come down to signing your prints on paper or canvas, but the proper things you should do before you just take a pen and just sign away. So when it comes to signing your prints, you want to make sure you got a pair of gloves on so that the natural oils in your skin doesn't damage the print at all. And it's extra hot in my room today, that's why I'm in a tank top. So my extra sweat that I have to deal with, I don't want that ruining the image itself. So I've got these plastic gloves on. A lot of people like to use cloth gloves because they're even safer than plastic gloves. But just having something on your hands makes it that much more safe than signing your prints and actually dealing with maybe the sweat or grease or oil from like maybe your wrist accidentally leaning on the picture, getting on the image and messing up. So a lot of times instead of signing off right off the bat, I like to take one of my spare pieces I've already cut up or cut off or I don't need from old printer paper, and I practice my signature on that because it's super important to practice signing on the texture of the item you're going to be signing yourself, because you only get one shot at signing the item. If you mess up your signature, either you have to reprint it or just cringe at the fact you know you messed it up and hope nobody notices. Then when it comes to where you're going to put your signature on your print, I feel like 99% of the time people always put it in the right corner, but maybe if your image is too busy on the right side, you might sign it on the left or maybe down the center. I really don't know where is the correct, proper way to sign. Just sign it where you want to. I typically try to move it like a quarter or half an inch above the actual image itself, just because sometimes you find on some mats it does kind of mask the edge of the photo even though it's supposed to be for the exact kind of image. Sometimes the paper or the texture of the cardboard or whatever a mat's made out of extends just a little tad beyond where it could cut off your signature, so just push it a little bit more in. But it's time to do it. And I need to practice a few more times. Okay, I think I got it down. Best of wishes. Best of luck, Marcelo. And there's my signature on the image. Hope you like it. If this video helped you at all with printing or signing or whatever, let me know. It lets me know if I'm doing everything correctly. If you have questions about any of this stuff I had on the side, this is really just stuff I use to kind of cut photos down to fit frames right. Before I end this video, I kind of walk through those real quickly. So I've got a yardstick, and I've also got a ruler, reflective on one side. The most important part is that on the other, it's got the little cardboard backing so that it's not sliding around on your photo as you're trying to cut down the side. I kind of just knocked it off the table. What I currently use to cut is an X-Acto knife, and what I basically do is I run this up the side of the ruler, keeping my hand on the ruler so the ruler doesn't budge at all, and just keeping pressure along the knife so that you get a nice straight solid cut. And then this thing right here, I'm not gonna pick it up, but it's just, X-Acto knife fell off again. But this thing is just a 24-inch mat with a bunch of lines so you can line up your photo correctly and make sure it's being cut evenly down a line instead of trying to hope for the best and guess on another flat surface. But as always, I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys can improve your printing process and maybe even your signing process from now on. But as always, let's recap. I'm not gonna try to throw it. I don't want to like scratch my camera, so. Oh, and then before I forget this, bonus tip. Make sure you already have some plastic coverings for the size of the paper that you're printing out. So if you're not instantly putting it in a frame, you have a safe way of storing the photo so that it doesn't get damaged by dust, dirt, grime, or scratches while you're waiting to put it in a frame or deliver it to the person you're giving it to. Plastic coverings.